Hello you guys, it's Grace, and today I have a very exciting video planned for you guys. I am going to be ranking every book I read in 2021 from my least favorite all the way to my favorite book of the year. I just moved back to my hometown. I graduated this past weekend, so I'll be living here for the next several months while I wait to hear back from the grad schools I applied to. I only finished 24 books this year, and one of them I finished literally 15 minutes ago. I'll try if my voice sounds funny. I am recuperating from a little bit of a cold. I hit the end of the semester, my body was just like, you're done. Without further ado, we are going to start with my least favorite read of 2021. My least favorite book of 2021 was In Other Rooms, Other Wonders by Daniel Weneden. This was a book I read for my international short fiction class. It was a compilation of short stories, with the majority of them being set in Pakistan. There were a couple stories in there that I thought were really interesting and I enjoyed, but as a whole, the short story collection really fell flat for me, so I give it 1 star. Number 23 on my list was It's a Lonely Love by Hunter Summerall. There was nothing wrong with this story, it just didn't really keep my attention. It's a book of poems, and it was fine. Not quite what I needed at that point in the year. Next up on my list, I have Wayfarer by Alexandra Bracken. I wanted to like this duology so badly. I expected a lot from it because I really loved the other series of Alexandra Bracken's that I read, the Darkest Mind series, but I just did not like this one. I had no connection to the characters. I just really struggled to get into it, and maybe it was the time that I read it, but I couldn't do this one. And now we're moving on to my first 2.5 out of 5 stars on the list, and that was The 30 Names of Night by Zain Jacadar. I loved the cover of this book. I'd just like to take a moment. Look at how pretty it is. And this was another book that I was excited about the premise, but it also just fell very flat for me. This story follows our main character who is exploring his identity as a trans man, and it also explores racial identity as a Syrian American. Self-exploration is a topic in books that I really enjoy reading about, and I kind of expected the same of this one, and I just found myself getting very bored. Number 20 on my list was my 3-star book, and it's The Dash by Linda Ellis and Mac Anderson. It was one of those books that I read and it was interesting, and then I put it down and I completely forgot what happened. 19 was my other 3-star read, which was Light Filters and Poems by Carolyn Kaufman. It was another poem compilation that just kind of was like, okay, cool. It wasn't bad, it wasn't particularly good. It was fine. Number 18 was a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and it was Passenger by Alexandra Bracken. This is the first book in the duology, and I liked the first book better than Wayfarer, but it still wasn't what I expected. I liked the beginning and I liked the premise. Basically, this book follows our main character, Etta, and she gets kind of pulled into this time travel adventure, and there's music and piracy, and it's just, I expected it to be very interesting, and it just fell flat. Number 17 on my list is my first 4-star book on the list. Number 17 was Juliet Takes a Breath by Gabby Rivera. This one was really interesting, another one that explored kind of queer identity, racial identity. Could I tell you exactly what happened in the plot? No. Do I remember really enjoying the book? Yes. My next 4-star read was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. It follows a babysitter who is Black, and she goes to the grocery store with the little girl that she's babysitting, and she ends up getting the police called on her because they think she stole the baby or something. It follows her dealing with what that meant and deciding she doesn't really want that media footage to be put out into the world, and then kind of explores her relationship with Alex Chamberlain, who is the mother of the child that the main character babysits. So it was just a really interesting book, a fun exploration. It had some good humor in it. I really enjoyed this one. Next up, we have another book from that book club. It is called The Orchard by David Hoppin. This one follows our main character, Ari Eden, who is an Orthodox Jew. Most of his life growing up, he lived in a very strict neighborhood. They basically were just very strictly Jewish. And then he moves to Miami with his family and he meets these other Jews that are, let's just say that they bend the rules a little bit more. So he starts to kind of experiment with alcohol and drugs and partying and all these things that his family would be, frankly, mortified to learn he was doing. And it's kind of a coming of age, fun growth, life exploration novel. It was just very enjoyable. I loved this book, which I did not expect to love this book. But all the characters were just super fun to read about. 14 is Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. This is the book I just finished. If I'm being completely honest, I almost DNF'd this book. I'm so glad I didn't. But the first half of this book, first of all, I was reading it at the end of the semester. So it was a very stressful, very busy time. So I didn't have time to just sit down and read this book. I was reading a chapter at a time every few days. So understandably, I had a hard time getting into the beginning of this book. I got home this past Monday. I decided, all right, just jump into it. You love Leigh Bardugo. You've loved every book you've read by her. You're gonna like this book too. So just read it. So I sat down and I read 200 pages in one day. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of getting into this now. So basically the second half of the book read so fast. I got very into it. I remembered why I love these characters. And I had a really good time. Right, and then number 13 is King of Scars, the first book in that duology. I had a little bit of a challenging time getting into this one as well. I think the part that made this duology a little bit harder for me to get into than the other books set in this universe. And then these ones were just a lot more set up and politics and that kind of stuff, which is amazing, and Leigh Bardugo is so talented. But it just made it a little harder for me to get into these ones than the other books she's written. All right, and then we have number 12, which is my first 4.5 out of 5-star read, and it was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is a book set in, I feel like it's New Orleans or something like that. But this one is about a girl who's known as the marsh girl. She basically was raised in the marsh, and because of that, she doesn't really have impeccable manners, or she is very poor, just kind of lives out in the marsh, and she's blamed for a murder. So the whole story is kind of the murder mystery and figuring out if she did it or not, and the ending was just really cool. And then number 11 was my other 4.5-star read, and that was Anyway the Wind Blows by Rainbow Rowell, the third book in the Carry On trilogy. But this one was just a lot of fun to read. It explored a lot more of Simon and Baz, which I loved. And then for my 7 through 10 slots, I have my first of the 5-star books of the year, which were rereads actually for me. ACOTAR Through a Court of Frost and Starlight. Just some rereads, I won't really talk about them, but I loved rereading these ones and I wanted to prepare for the newest book that came out. And then for my 4 through 6 slots, I have the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I read this for the first time this year. I know, surprising. This series has been out for a really long time and I meant to get to it sooner, but I didn't. So I read it this year and I loved it, and I was so mad I didn't read it sooner because I absolutely loved it. Now we're on to my final 3, my top 3 books of 2021. Coming into spot number 3, we have The Toll by Neal Shusterman. This was my first book I read in 2021, and it really set the bar high because it was amazing. It's one of the best wrap-ups to a series I have read in a very long time. If you still haven't picked up the Scythe trilogy by Neal Shusterman, please do. It's so good. Definitely one of my favorite series of all time. And then number 2 If there's not a Sarah J. Maas book on my list every single year, I think something's wrong. We have A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. It had the swoony romance I was hoping for, but it also had the dealing and coping with trauma aspect that was good. And I liked it a lot. And I know a lot of people have different feelings about this series, but I love it. I will never stop loving it. I will just keep reading the books as they come out because they make me feel good. And I like reading them. Book number 1! Beautiful drum roll. My number 1 favorite book of 2021 is The Invisible Life of Addie Larue by V.E. Schwab. I loved this book more than words can describe. This book made me feel seen in a way that I have never experienced in my life. It is my newest all-time favorite book. The characters in this book, every single one of them, perfect. The plot, perfect. The premise, like, yes, I want a girl who lives forever, but no one can remember her after she leaves their sight. Why did I not realize I needed that sooner? Also, bookish, like, it felt bookish. Like, you know, books that have bookish elements and are therefore just better because of it? This. Henry, perfection. Luke, amazing. Addie, I would die for her. And the full circle ending! It was just so good, okay? Like, it was a book that made me want to just start over right from the beginning after finishing it. I think I did read the first chapter again, and then I was like, no, Grace. Like, I was still early in the year, so I was like, no, you have goals to accomplish this year. It broke my heart, put it all back together. It was so beautiful, and I just loved it. And all the plot twists and the storyline, it was just so good. I could blather on about it forever, but I won't. If you have not read this beautiful book, please do. It will make your life better. Those were the 24 books I read in 2021. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys read this year. What were your favorites? What are you looking forward to next year? Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Comment below what you read this year. And subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!